Hey, welcome. Let's get those cameras on. Quick wave as usual if you can hear me, just to make sure. Awesome, great. Okay, so we're going to start up in the second half of the class. We're now into Module 3. And so the second half is going to be different than the first in that we're learning analysis methods. And we're going to use the software JASP. So today's topic down here is Introduction to JASP, J-A-S-P. Okay, so before we get started, there's a few things I wanted to just touch base on with everybody first. So in Blackboard, there's a couple things there. Let's pull that up. Okay, so in Blackboard, there we go. All right, so first thing, Quiz 2, I sent an email out last week, and Quiz 2 is now open for your review. So as before, what I'm going to do each time is, after the quiz, after pretty much everyone has taken it, I'm going to open it up for 24 hours. So you should be able to check in grade center your grade and go to the quiz, and you can see which ones you got, wrong and what the right answers were, so you can learn from that material. There were basically 5 questions. They pretty much gave full credit for four full credit on for one of them, and then the 5th one partial credit in the sense there were a couple answers. I think 3 answers they gave the correct answer for, and those should be flagged when you go through and review. You should get a little bit of feedback on those questions, what was going on there. So there's also what I'm going to do going forward is there is in the announcements. Excuse me. If you haven't seen this, there's going to be something like this each time. A summary of the descriptive statistics. And you can see this is done in JASP. So this is JASP I'm using. It's a pretty cool little program, so I'm using it for a lot of stuff now. So the first quiz and second quiz, just to compare, the second one was tougher. It's about 4 points lower in the mean and the median. There's the frequency tables. We're talking about frequencies in next class. Distribution plots. These axes aren't scaled the same. You have to be a little bit careful there, but that just kind of shows the box plots, the distribution. And then the scatter plot is plotting quiz 1 against quiz 2. There's a correlation of 0.379, which means that people who tended to do good in quiz 1 tended to do good in quiz 2, but there's some exceptions there. So I'm going to give you stuff like that. It is a research class, so we're going to go by the numbers on these things here. Okay, so that's the quiz. Second thing in Blackboard for today is that the project. And you should have right now access to a couple of things for the project. If you go and look at the course project info tab and click on it now, I've made available a more detailed description of the course project. Please read that. At the beginning of next class, when we come into class, you will see a Google Docs sign-up sheet to sign up for a project group. And you can start talking to people beforehand so you all can sign up together if you want, but that won't be available until the very beginning of class on Wednesday. But read this beforehand so you know what the project is all about. So there's project information there, there's a code book, and then there's a JASP data set for the project. And I'm going to say a little bit more about it. But that's where all that information is. So let's kind of go into the slides, as I have some more things there that I wanted to talk about with the project. And so for today, we're going to go and talk about first a little bit of project details. Then I'm going to introduce you to this HP data set that we're going to use this week and next week. There's a few data sets we're going to use to illustrate these techniques. And then I'll go through an introduction to JASP. So that's the deal for today. And we'll have an exercise. We'll start it today. It's good. The exercise, big surprise, will be about using JASP. And I'll have you do it individually. So I'm going to leave a little bit of time, maybe 5-10 minutes at the end of class to start it. It's not a big deal. I just want you to get your fingers going using JASP. And we'll talk about it Wednesday in class. So this exercise will be due Wednesday at the beginning of next class. It's just getting you familiar with some of the mechanics of using our software. Okay, so the project first, a little bit of details on the project. Okay, so the project, again, so today I pointed out in Blackboard, you've got these 3 things, the PDF that has a multi-page description of the project. Then you've also got a survey code book, And on the right-hand side, there is like part of it there. I looked around for different data sets, and this one is kind of a nice, it's fairly extensive. It's got about 1,000 people and about 150 variables. And so, for example, at the beginning, the questions are kind of described very quickly and concisely here. So makes it kind of easier to figure out what's in there. So you start, there's 19 questions on different types of music preferences. Do you enjoy listening to music? We got what type of scale is this? The first one. You want to remember all the stuff we had last module? That type of scale is what? Anyone care to just shout it out? As an exam question, a quiz question, the scale is different types. What would it be?
Likert.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. So that information should still be in there. You're going to see these question types in these surveys as we go through here. So we got a Likert scale, agree, disagree. Then we have a bunch of basically just itemized rating scales. So you have a code book to look through there. There's also the JASP data set. And then, as I said, a sign-up sheet will be ready for you for next class. And let's see, I'll give you until midnight. And if you haven't, so this time next class, you can start signing up. If you haven't signed up by the very end of the day, I'll just randomly pop you into a group. And as I said in my email, one of the groups, there are some students who are actually in Asia and who, for whom this is a middle of the night time of day. There is one group, group 10 is an asynchronous group. So you'll see that when you get into Blackboard as well too. Okay, so project description, you read about it. This is from Slovakia. This is about 1,110 consumers. And it's called the Young People Survey. It's the under 30 and under Slovak consumer market. And we're going to talk about how this could be useful for also. So right here with the bullets, this is what the project is about. And if you look at these things and you think, I don't know how to do this, you will know how to do this by the time it's the project. This is the stuff we're going to be covering. So my objective in Module 3 and Module 4 is to teach you what you know so that you can confidently approach these bullets and answer these questions. You can start looking at it at any time, but for example, the first two, music preferences and movie preferences, do consumers make any clusters of similar music tastes and movie tastes? That's a cluster analysis problem. You're going to learn how to do cluster analysis so you can actually learn what these segments are. There's the machine learning methods we're going to use for that. You'll have those tools under your belt to be able to do this. So you're going to figure out what the clusters are, music and movie. The third thing is are there connections between those? Are there connections between music and movie preferences? Keeping these precedents pretty open there. I'm not telling you exactly how to do it, what methods to use. You're the analyst at that point. This is up to you to figure out. The management has come to you and said, these are the things we want to know. You're going to take what you've learned and you're going to figure out the best way to answer these questions. Okay, the report's not that long. It's all described in the description there, but read all that over, and if you have questions about it, bring those to class next time. Then you see the fourth one, can a consumer's spending habits be predicted from their music preferences, movie preferences, interests, other things, which is best? That's up to you to figure out how to approach this, right? So, and then are there differences between men and women, younger and older consumers, other demographic variables? Okay, so these are things to think about. We're going to have a lot of tools that will help you answer this. I'm not looking for you to do every analysis under the sun, because that would probably take you a year, right? You don't need to do that. You need to come up with a good approach that answers these questions using what we talked about in class. And then there's kind of the last bullet there. What else do you think would be useful besides what I put in here that you think could provide insight to ALSA as they're trying to understand the 30 and under consumer market? Okay, so it's pretty open-ended. I'm trying to give you a lot of flexibility here to apply what you've learned, come up with the things you think are most relevant and useful, and build a project around that. And you will be working this in teams. You can start thinking about it now. We have these two modules of methods. If you look at this and you think, I don't know how to begin, don't worry. You're going to know how to approach these by the time you get to actually working on this. And one thing I recommend is like on a week by week basis, kind of think of the week's topics and think, could that apply to these questions some way, and maybe start playing around with it. I would not wait until the week before it's due to even think about this project. I'm not saying you have to be working on it full force until then, but you should start thinking about it. As you hear the stuff in class, start thinking, how does this apply? Kind of get familiar with the data, play around with it a little bit. You will have a whole week. We'll have 2 work sessions here. That goes by pretty quickly though. Don't save it until then to start, okay? But you'll have that time, and then we have presentations the last class. Okay, I'm going to hold off on any questions on this until everyone's had a chance to look over everything, but we'll start off next class. I'll ask if you have any questions on the project. But for now, make sure you get the stuff from Blackboard, look through, and be sure to sign up for a group beginning class next time. Okay, again, this is the survey. It's broken into these different categories: music, movie, interests, phobias, health habits, personality. Then online use, there's a key section on spending habits. That's the marketing relevant outcome there. And there's a section of about 10 demographic variables. Okay, that's the young people survey. That's for the project. All right, so start thinking about that. This is another data set. This you should have pulled out of Blackboard. And you can, you don't need it right now, but one thing I'm really strongly recommending that you folks do is go through, when you go through my slides, also go through the analyses and try to replicate them yourselves, just so that you can actually do them in JASP. It's not a big deal, but you want to be comfortable that what I'm producing in the slides, you can actually do that. Because it gives you kind of a template for the sort of things you can do, and you're going to see that when you get to the project, for example, if you yourself know how this stuff works in JASP, you're going to be a lot further ahead than if you have never fired it up and even tried it. There'd be some exercise you're going to have to use it for, but what I'm suggesting is that after the lecture, just take I don't think it would take that long. I think maybe even 15, 20 minutes to kind of run through, make sure you can plug this stuff in and produce the analyses that I'm producing, just so you know where these things come from. Okay, so this HP data set, it's another code book. This one is in the book. It's in Malhotra. It's here, I got it on paper. And what you've got to do is pull this down. It's a PDF. This is a question, the surveys about Hewlett-Packard, right? So this is surveys about Hewlett-Packard. Some general questions on internet use. 3 questions, HP satisfaction and loyalty. Then there's a section on, that's where my head is, this one here, computer manufacturer importance performance rating. So this is people's assessment of what they like about HP. Then there's the questions on early adopter attributes. HP is interested in consumers who may be lead users, who are very innovative, and these are some scales that measure people who are basically early adopters of products. So there's that. There's questions at the very end on demographics, not that many. And then at the very end of it, there's a set here of what I call on the right-hand side, recoded variables. Okay, so recoding. When you're actually doing practical marketing research, your research supplier, whoever it is, collects the data and you work with it, but you probably are going to have to take the variables and recode them in some way, right? So you might have age in maybe 12 different groups and you decide that's too many. I'm going to produce 3 age segments. So you recode them into different segments. Okay, you might have asked something in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scale and you think, I wish I asked it on a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 scale. So you have to recode it in some way. These have already been recoded in the HP data set. So they're there. We're going to talk about them as to go through and look at this example. But the point I want to make here is that if you're actually doing this, recoding is something that's going to take a lot of your time. I'm trying to spare you that in here because you don't have all that much time to learn this stuff. I want to focus on application of the methods. I don't want you to really spend your time crunching and recoding and stuff like that. So I'm trying to keep that to a minimum. So you're going to get things from me that have a lot of recoded variables. In the project, I need to do a little bit of recoding, but compared to how I taught the class before, I'm really trying to minimize that so that that is not a big part of what you're doing. Okay, so some things to look for in this survey code book. We're going to call it a code book. So you have the survey, and the word code book means that there is kind of a mapping what people did into numbers that can be analyzed, right? The code book is kind of it's like, literally what that sounds like. It's a code book. It's the key that tells you what this stuff means. So I have it color coded here. So in red, there are variable names. Okay, now Q1, that's not very descriptive, but that's the name of the first variable. It could be anything you want. You're going to get it in JASP. I think it's called Q1 in JASP. If you want to change that, you can. We'll talk about how you do that. But that's the name of the variable. That's how it's referred to. When you pull things out of menus, you'll be looking for Q1, Q2. There's a Q3. I've highlighted Q4 over here. Over on this side's Q4. So there's the variable names. Then the second thing there are these value codes in green. These are the numbers you're going to analyze. So Q1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are the codes, or sometimes they're called the variable values. So the values are the codes. And those are in green, those are numbers. And then the third thing is text. That's the value label. So each code has some descriptive text so that we can understand what that code means. Okay, so the value labels are the things that the respondents are probably seeing as they complete the survey. And the respondent probably didn't see these numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They probably just saw a checkbox, but behind the scenes, those value codes were assigned to those value labels. That's another big part of all the stuff. And Malhotra goes through all the gory details that happen in data collection. I'm trying to spare you that as well, too. So when you get these data sets, they're going to have value codes for sure, and they'll have some value labels some of the times where it seems to be useful. So, but again, if you're actually doing this, you're going to have to be finding someone to do this for you or doing it yourself, of putting in value labels and match the value codes and making sure all that stuff is clean and neat and tidy. In this data set, that's been done. Okay, so the these things here, like yes and no, these value labels, they can be anything you want, whatever you think is going to make it clearer as you're analyzing the data and the computer output has these things printed on there, what you think is going to be most useful. And we'll see in JASP, we make some modifications sometimes just to make it clearer for everybody. But the principle is you have these three things here. Okay. All right. So this is, again, the recoding. I talked about that. This is the recoded part here. And the text at the very bottom where I'm moving away from basically just says, I'm trying to spare you from doing this. But you recode for lots of reasons, maybe to reduce the number of response categories. You have 5 levels of satisfaction. Maybe you just want to code it into 2, satisfied, dissatisfied, or 3, satisfied, in between, dissatisfied. So things may be recoded in some way. So recoding is part of this whole process. Okay, so that's a quick run through the data. We're going to see it when we actually use it. All right, now for JASP, excuse me, I'm going to ask you just with let me see how many people I can see here. If you can do a thumbs up, how many of you have actually successfully downloaded and installed JASP on your computer right now? Awesome, great. So I see thumbs up with real hands, I see thumbs up with virtual. Let me go to the second screen. Keep the thumbs up. I'm going to the second screen. Oh, good. Okay, most of you are actually, everyone with a camera is on the first screen. Those of you without cameras, I don't know if you have thumbs or even hands. Oh, actually, okay, some of you have thumbs up. Great, so I'm seeing a fair amount of thumbs up, that's great. All right, so you have that. Did you have any issues? Any issues emerge? I'm hoping not. Is anyone here on Windows? I don't use Windows, but anyone on Windows able to successfully do it? No problem. So Emily, I see you're saying you got it okay. Miriam, you said also, yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so everyone has JASP. There's a couple things they want you to do just to set it up. You can even do this right now. If you don't, you can do it. Don't forget to do this. You have to just do it once. But there's a few settings that you're going to want to have so that you have things working the right way. So 3 basic things for JASP setup. Okay, so first thing first, so you download it. It's a lot of thumbs up there. You also, quick thumbs up also in the JASP manual. Everyone pull that down, right? So it's the green PDF. Cool, you got all that. This is the most recent version. This one just came out in December. Make sure you have this as well. I had in Blackboard to read pages 1 to 24 today. If you haven't, be sure you do that. I'm going to go over stuff, but they give you a lot more detail there. So the first 24 pages kind of give you an overview of the interface and how to do things. Okay, so this is the software. If JASP comes up with a new version during the semester, I'll let you know if you want to update it. The answer is you probably will. They're always adding new features to it. Okay, so here's the first thing. So in the preferences, so you got that little hamburger menu that everyone calls the hamburger thing with the 3 lines. And that one you can open up and you will see under preferences, data, and then under data preferences, I want you to uncheck use default spreadsheet editor, select a custom editor, and explicitly put in the program you're going to want to use to edit JASP data. So I put in Excel here. You might be using numbers, you can use that. Those are the main 2 choices. There's other more arcane things that people sometimes use. It should be okay without that, but just to make sure to do that. And I'll pull up JASP in a second just to see where this stuff is, but that's the first thing. So to explicitly set the editor to the program of your choice. And you should only have to do that this one time. Now, the reason you're doing this is JASP is a little bit different than other programs. It doesn't have its own data editor built into it. It uses another data editor, and I just use Excel for that. Right? And so what this basically means is if you ever need to edit the data, like change the name of a variable, or just say there was a mistake, or just say you want to actually compute some things, you can do that in Excel. And then you sync that with JASP, and then the 2 work together. It's a little bit weird because most programs don't work that way, but they designed it that way to give people flexibility in the editor they're choosing. And also because then they don't have to code a data editor into JASP. But I think it actually is a pretty nice workaround for data editing. So you want to set that up. Then the other thing you want to do, this should be checked. Just make sure it says synchronize automatically on data file save. Okay, so you want to make sure that that's done. And that does that syncing. If you edit something in Excel and save it, it gets synced into the JASP data set automatically. Okay, so that's the setup. And then the only other setup, you won't need these for some time, but there is a big blue plus on the right-hand side of the top navigation there. And so you want to click that, and that opens up this other menu of other modules. And we're going to need the machine learning module, you're going to need the reliability module, and I think those are the only 2 you're going to need. So you click those, and they'll get popped into that top menu bar up here then. You'll see icons appear for them. Okay, so let's see. So what I want to do is just real quickly pull up JASP. So this is JASP. So I'm in JASP. I've actually opened the data, but before you do that, again, this hamburger menu, if you click that thing, where am I? I'm not in JASP yet. There I am. All right, so here I am. And this is preferences. And that's where you see all the stuff about the data preferences. I got my default spreadsheet editor checked. I would uncheck that. I would go again, navigate to Excel, change it there. I didn't do it for, actually, you know what? You might have to do this each time you bring in a new data set. So I'm not quite sure about that. If it doesn't seem to be opening Excel correctly, you can go and do this. But so that's the data preferences, synchronize automatically, and then the plus. This, I've got some other things checked here as well, but that's where you add those things in there. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to go back to the slides, and I'm just going to ask you, as I pause for a second here, has anyone taken a stab at doing that as I've been talking?
Yeah, I was doing it and it was working.
Okay, so Marina, you're able to get in the preferences, change those things. And so keep in mind, I started using JASP a little while ago, so I'm not sure exactly on things like you need to put those the data editor preference in each time or not. You might have to. It's not that big of a deal if you do. Okay, so make sure you got those things set up. And then any questions on that? Anyone looking to do this but not able to do that?
I have a question for the project.
Mm-hmm.
How many people per group were you thinking about?
It'd be 5.
5.
5 for most of the groups. We have just under 50 people though, so a couple of the groups are going to have 4. And the asynchronous group, I don't know how many we've got in there. That might be a smaller group. These are people that can't meet face to face right now. They might have to be in a smaller group. But most of the groups will be 5 students. One of the groups will be 4. One or two will be 4 students.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And are we picking our groups?
Yes, you are. You're picking them. I'm not randomly assigning. It's up to you. And again, you come to class. I'm not going to open it until I get on and I do the hand waving thing and say, can you hear me? Then I will open it up and you can sign up then. Okay, and it's, you use Google Docs, those things work. You put everything in and it's kind of crazy. Everyone's signing up all at once. So just, if you want to work with someone else, just coordinate with them and it should work smoothly.
How many people per group? Like
5.
maximum? 5.
Maximum 5, but some groups will have to be 4 just because we don't have a round number of 50 students. Almost all the groups will be 5. So you have a little bit of time right at the beginning of class to sign up. And if you want to just be randomly assigned, I'm happy to do that. But if you want to work with someone, just coordinate with them and make sure you sign up for the same group. Other questions on getting JASP set up, on the project, on anything else? Okay, so let's talk about this now, opening the data. So the HP data set, all the JASP files have a .jasp extension. And this, do this definitely. You can try this now if you want, but if you don't do it now, be sure you do it after class so that you know how to do this. You want to first, number 1, download the data set. You also, of course, have the Young People Survey. That's a separate data set, but this is the HP one right now. So you download that. And there are 2 ways to open it in JASP. So you can do Open Computer Browse. So that is, if you go into JASP, you've got in here that, again, the hamburger menu, Open. And it's a little confusing at first because it's Open Computer is the one you want. Browse lets you browse your computer. Recent files will pull up things you've done recently. So once you open things, you'll see them in here. OSF, forget about that. That's like an online archive for data sets. Data library, JASP comes with a lot of data sets if you want to play around with. Those are things it comes with. But I'm going to be giving you the data sets for the most part in Blackboard that you're going to download, like the HP data set that we're working with today. So you can go to Open Computer Browse, find it. I suggest be organized in terms of where you put the data sets. Have like a folder where all this stuff goes on your computer so you know where to find the stuff. So that's kind of the brute force ways to go through the menus and open it. Now, what we usually like to do is just double click on the file, right? And it pops open the application. So when I did that with JASP, it didn't pop open JASP. But I'm on a Mac and you can easily specify JASP as the default app for opening files with that extension. So there's the instructions on the Mac for how to do that. For Windows, if you want to be the type of person who just double clicks on a file and it opens up the application, you probably have to set that up. It's not a big deal. If you struggle with it, just ask someone in your group, ask another student how to do it. You are your own IT resources for this. Okay, so I see that you can, in terms of honor code, one thing I want to make clear is learning how to use the software. It is not an honor code violation to ask other students, how do I do something in JASP? It would be an honor code violation to ask the other students outside of your group, how do I answer this question for the project? That's only your group. But if it's something like this, if it's a technical question, I can't associate JASP on a Mac and I can't double click and it opens up, but I follow those instructions, they don't work. You got it working, what did you do? That's perfectly fine, all right? So non-substantive technical how-to questions about how to use the program, you are okay asking anyone in the class or me for advice on how to do that. And your group, once you get the group set up, you should be your own support team too. You should go to each other. You should be the go-to person for each other. If things aren't clear how to run things in JASP, you should be looking to each other first as your first line of support, because you're going to need each other when it's time for analyzing the data to all be up to speed. So you want to make sure that your team members know as much as you do. So you want to help each other on that. Okay, so there's a couple ways to open up the data set. You'll have it opened up. It's loaded into the JASP spreadsheet. And then this third step, this thing, you're just going to need to do this when you first open a data set. You click on a cell. So you double click You just click on a cell in the JASP spreadsheet. And when you do that, you're going to see this weird pop-up. Looks like an error message, but it's not. So you see this thing here with the question mark. So I'm going to move my cursor here. So you got this question mark here. It says JASP was started without associated data file, CSV, save, or ODS file. And then it gives you all this stuff. All you do at this point is click generate data file. What's this saying in English is you've opened a JASP file, but JASP does not have a way to edit the data. So it needs to use, say, Excel. So JASP is looking for a CSV, comma-rated separated values file, to edit, but there isn't one. So you should generate one the first time. So once you do that, and I've got this down here in the bottom right, you will see in your folder, you've downloaded that JASP file, that's sitting there. You generate the data file, and JASP will create for you a copy of your data set that's a CSV format. Okay? And then what you'll see when you're in JASP, you'll be in JASP, you have the spreadsheet editor, and you click on the cell in there, it opens up Excel, and you actually have 2 copies of your data. One in JASP, one in Excel. And I got some slides to show you what that looks like as we go through. Okay, put that on your checklist or do list of things to make sure you can do after class. This is a mechanical thing. It's not a big deal, but you want this to understand how this works. It's a little bit weird because I haven't seen any other program that really works like that. So, but just make sure you're familiar with what it's doing there. And so the idea is you'll have JASP, you'll open up Excel if you want to edit anything. And I have some slides, I think, that'll kind of show you what I'm talking about there. Okay, so that's just about opening the data. All right, JASP spreadsheet. You work in Excel, you work in numbers, you have a spreadsheet. JASP is no different. When I was in JASP, I showed you quickly what my spreadsheet looked like. Here I've got it highlighted in colors. And so what we've got here is what you're looking at is in my spreadsheet, I've got the red is at the very top. These are those variable names. So remember I showed you the HP code book. I had a version that was color coded. You had Q1, Q2, Q3. Those things you'll see in JASP as the column headers. So if you're working in Excel, those would be like your column names in your Excel spreadsheet. So Q1, and now it says Q2 underscore 1, Q2 underscore 2, Q2 underscore 3. So pull up that HP data set you've downloaded. And you probably don't have it on paper, but you have it on your screen. It's a PDF. Somebody explain to me on this HP survey, what is Q2 underscore 1, Q2 underscore 2, Q2 underscore 3? What is that referring to? Make sure we're on the same page here.
It would refer to each sub-question within question 2. So like Q2 underscore 1 would be either the yes or no response to communicated with others via news groups or chat rooms and so on for all the possible responses.
Great, exactly, Emily. So we see the 3 of them. We scrolled over further. We would expect to go up to Q2 underscore 7 because there's 70s there. So what you want to look, the data set has its own variable names. Everything that has been in that code book is going to have a name, and you're going to look and make sure that you understand in the JASP data set what those names correspond to in your code book. Okay, so the code book isn't perfectly done. If I was actually, somebody gave me this code book, I would say probably, you know what, you finish your work here. Why don't you put the actual variable names on for every variable on here? So put Q2 underscore 1, underscore 2, underscore 3, underscore 7. So in some ways, this is kind of a sloppily done code book that I gave you, right? So, but you should recognize that's what those are. In blue, we have the value labels. Now you'll notice for Q2 underscore 1, there's 2 things going on. Did not communicate with others via news groups or chat rooms. Communicated with others via news groups or chat rooms. Communicate with others, that's yes, the other one is no. So the value labels in the data set differ from the survey. Instead of yes, no, they're longer and more descriptive. All right. And the reason for doing that is if you do a table, when you look at this, it'll be basically already labeled. You know what yes and no means. And that's kind of helpful because the variable name here is not very descriptive. It just says Q2 underscore 1. There's a lot of ways this could have been done, right? We could have had Q2 underscore 1 communicated with others via news group or chat room. That could have been the variable name. and then the labels could have been yes or no. All right, so just a question of style. This was the decision that was made in coding this data set. Okay, but one thing is missing. There aren't any numbers. There aren't any value codes, right? So in the survey, a yes should be what number? Communicated with others via news groups or chat rooms should be what number? There's a number that goes with that, and I'm not seeing a number. There's two ways to do that. You can go to the survey and look, and if you look at that, yes is a 1, so that should be a 1. But the question is, where is it? So to see those, you would click on those column headers, and when you do that, what you see once you click is you'll see something open up at the top. And I did it here for Q1 actually. So it's shown here for Q1 instead of Q2_1. But if you click on the column header, it opens up at the top and shows you a list of the value labels. And there they are, going down from less than 1 hour up to 41 hours or more. And there's the values. All right. So what JASP does is it keeps things kind of clean and hides those for you. But if you go into, let's go into JASP again and actually see what that looks like as you do it dynamically. So I'm going back here into JASP, and there we go. And let me get back here into oops. All right, so one of the things here you'll see, just a little side thing, in JASP, the navigation, you see these ... verticals. That's kind of a drag thing. You can sign this, everything works in one window. So this kind of drags things. You can either drag from the top one or the bottom one. I've dragged so much I've lost it there. There it is. You can also use these arrows in the middle to go from screen to screen. But in the spreadsheet here, Q1, if I click on that, it pops this open, another drag, I can drag that down. And so I can see here what I had on my slides here. For Q1, the values are 1 through 6, and it goes from less than 1 hour to 41 hours. If I click on the second column, now we see value 1 is communicated with others, value 2 is did not communicate with others. Okay, so you'll see for each of these things here, it's basically from that code book, it tells you how the values, codes or values, so these are what I'm calling the codes, the numbers, are mapped into labels for each of the variables. Okay, any questions on that? This is kind of useful if you're looking at this and you're looking at your survey and you're saying, but it had numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for question 1. What are they? There they are. Okay, so when you get into JASP, if you're not doing it now, do it later, play around, make sure you see where that is. Just clicking or unclicking the column header shows or hides that information. Okay. All right, so back to the slides again. Now, one other thing, we talked about measurement level. And you might have thought as we did measurement level, this is very theoretical. Whoever cares about measurement level in real life? Well, you actually do have to care about it because in some software, particularly JASP, it really makes a difference what the measurement level is. And so what JASP does, as I said very quickly when we talk about measurement level, it only has 3 levels. It has nominal, which you know about nominal, those are categorical kind of labels for things. Ordinal, those are numbers that are ordered, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or scale, those are going to be either interval or ratio level, right? They're kind of metric data or scale data. JASP works with 3 different levels. And you see these little colorful icons to the left of the variable name, the little bars here. So that means JASP is considering that to be an ordinal scale value, right? So each of the variable names in JASP has been associated with a variable measurement level. And the ones that are these 3 circles, that's nominal. So on this screen, we can see right now, Q1 has been set as ordinal, and then the other ones have been set as nominal. Okay, you can change these, and you're going to need to change these to do certain analyses as we go through in JASP, and you'll see why. What JASP does is restricts certain analyses to certain variable types. If you have a nominal variable, it won't let you take the mean, right? So if you have something that is 1, 2, 3, red, green, blue, it won't let you take the average if it's nominal, because the average doesn't mean anything for nominal variables. It's trying to keep you honest, basically. Okay, now you can change this. And so what I did here is for Q1, I changed the type. And let's go into JASP and actually see how that looks. I think it's better to see it in JASP. So if you go into JASP, and here we go. All I've done here is in Q1, so I'm in the spreadsheet, and instead of clicking on where it says Q1, I'm clicking on the little colorful icon. And that drops down now, and I'm going to change it to scale. So look what happened in my spreadsheet. I don't have the labels anymore. I have the numbers. And so what JASP does is if you have a scale variable, it doesn't show you the labels at all. It just shows you the numbers, because scale variables are all about the numbers. You're taking means, you're getting standard deviations, you're doing things like that. And the values themselves are not considered as labeled. Now, the labels aren't gone. They're just hidden. They're just not shown for that measurement type. And if I change it back, let's say we want to consider Q1 instead of a scale as ordinal, we have this back again. Okay? But there will be reasons, and you will try to do an analysis, and some analyses you will see you cannot do for certain types of data. And so for that reason, you'll need to change the measurement type. And you might think we should do that this is a real pain, and why did they do that? And I wish they hadn't. But if you think about it a little bit more, you realize they're just trying to make you think about whether the assumptions you're making about the data are valid for the type of analysis you're trying to do. So it's trying to keep you honest and doing the right type of analysis of the right type of data. Okay, so we'll see that again. That's just the first exposure to that idea of measurement level in JASP. Okay, this thing, I'm not going to work through this right now, but this is using Excel to edit a JASP data set. Try this yourselves. This, I think, is also described in the documentation, but if you double click in a cell, any cell in that spreadsheet, like the one I double clicked here, once you have that editor set up, Excel opened up for me, and I now have an Excel spreadsheet. You'll have two copies of the data. You have your JASP data set in the JASP spreadsheet. You double click a cell, boom, Excel opens up, you've got that. You're not going to need to do this very often. For the stuff I give you for the class exercises, you're hardly going to do this at all. Even in the project, you might need to do it a few times, but you're not going to routinely need to do this. But one reason you might want to do this is you may not like these variable names. Like you may not like Q1. You might say, I don't want to say Q1, I want to say Q1 underscore, or I want to say Q1 hours online, because I know what that means. If you want to change that, you would just edit it in Excel, save Excel, and that change would come back into JASP. Okay, so try that. That's something to try, and I have a slide here that shows what that looks like. But that is the extent to which you'll be doing editing in here. So I have this example here. I changed Q1 to Q1 underscore new underscore name. JASP is not picky. You don't even need the underscores. You can have spaces. It's pretty flexible in terms of what it lets you do with names of variables. But once you have the JASP preferences set, like I have here at the upper right, once you've done that, if you've done that with the preferences, then you can do what I'm showing you here. Yeah, once the preferences are set, then moving out of the way here in the bottom left, in Excel, column Q1 was renamed. As soon as you save Excel, you're going to see in JASP that change is reflected. So you've got a mirror copy of your data. You can change the Excel spreadsheet, and then that comes into JASP. So that means you can actually do fancy things in Excel. You can add things together, create new columns, save it. That new column will come back into JASP as well too. So since everyone's familiar with using Excel, that kind of gives you a way that you already know to manipulate the data. Okay, so that's data editing. That's all there is going to be to editing data in JASP, is using Excel to do it. Spreadsheet filtering, this is a minor point. This is not that big of a deal. But one of the other things, when you open up that panel and you see values and labels, you can uncheck this and it grays out certain rows there. You're not going to need to do this that much. Sometimes people overuse this, like you uncheck the men, you analyze the women. You uncheck the women, you analyze the men. There's much better ways to compare groups, but there might be a reason you need to do this and it lets you filter it. Something I don't think we're going to need to use that much, but it lets you do that. Okay, so that's a bunch of stuff. Any questions on this? And then I'm going to talk about how you do some basic analyses in JASP. So anything not particularly clear, I want you to go through these slides yourself, at least for this first lecture or two, to make sure you can do this stuff in JASP and it all works for you. Okay, so you're going to be doing that. Now, for the analyses here, at the very top, there's that ribbon. And this maps in where we are. So we're going to talk this week, frequencies. Frequencies are in the descriptives module. These are the modules. And then it's a little bit weird. The frequencies module has crosstabs. You might think frequencies are in frequencies, but frequencies are in descriptive, and crosstabs are in frequencies. But that's where you find this stuff. Then we move on, weeks 8. We're going to talk about t-tests through the t-test module, ANOVA, an ANOVA module, correlation, regression, the regression module, factor analysis, the factor module. And then factor analysis, also the reliability module. And then cluster analysis, we have a couple of classes on that because I want you to know how to do a market segmentation analysis and form clusters and evaluate them. There's a machine learning module that does cluster analysis. So these are all the tools that you're going to become familiar with. And my hope is that by using this software, you are going to be able to focus on what this stuff is, how to do it, how to interpret it, how to actually analyze the data, and not spend too much time worrying about like, how do I actually mechanically do this? Okay. All right, so descriptive statistics. This is what I'd use to do the grade distribution, for example. Okay, so the first module is descriptives. And all these things kind of have the same format. So you hit the module and it opens up a panel. And I'll show you in JASP in just a second what it looks like. We'll run through the slides first. So you have a scroll window that has all your variable names. So however you've named them, they've come this way in the data set you've downloaded. Q1, Q1 underscore 1, they're in order from left to right in your spreadsheet in this long list here. Every single variable is there. What you basically do is you select, you can click them and drag them over. You can drag them using that little arrow button in the center, or you can just literally drag them over. And you move them over, and as soon as you do that, JASP will immediately show statistics in the output window on the right. The philosophy here is to make the process of data analysis as interactive as possible. So as you do something, you see something happen in real time. If you decide you didn't want to have done that, you can deselect it and it goes away. So other packages, you do something, it produces output, you get lots and lots of stuff, you get confused of where you were. The idea here is you do something, you see the result, you want to change it, you can change that, and it's more interactive. So in here, if I want to run some descriptives, and I want to do that on, let's say, there's these 3 variables under the section satisfaction and loyalty from my HP survey, Q4, Q5, Q6. And over here in red, I'm summarizing what those are for you. Satisfaction with HP, will you recommend HP, choose HP again, and there's 5-point scales. So as soon as I drag those over, the results appear here. And we have here, what is that telling you about satisfaction with HP? Just look at the means. Quick and dirty interpretation of those means. Just anyone, what does that mean to you? Are people satisfied with HP? Dylan, I see your head nodding. Emily, your head's nodding. Yeah, they're satisfied on the 5-point scale. The midpoint is a 3. It's closer to 1. 1 is very satisfied. We have to take into account here that the lower the number, the more satisfied they are. So they're more satisfied than not. They're between a 1 and a 2. Okay, and this also tells us the valid n, there's 372. That means there's 372 observations in the data set. If you counted all those rows in this spreadsheet, there would be 372 of them. There is no missing data, which means everyone answered every one of those questions. And then you get the minimum and maximum. You see here the maximum value for Q4 and Q6 is a 4. Nobody even said they were very dissatisfied. So you get these basic descriptive statistics. And if you want, you can get more. There's a statistics pane. You click this, it opens up. You can check off all these other things you want. And I've got on the right-hand side a longer list. So if you want to just see in JASP what that looks like, and if you're pulling this up now, you can do it yourself. If you're not doing it now, do it. Definitely do this later so you see this. You'll have the spreadsheet. You click descriptives. Boom, there it is. And 4, 5, 6, I'm going to select all those and just pull them over. And notice as soon as I did that, I got my descriptive statistics. They're just sitting there for me. And then under this, frequency tables, I could get those if I wanted, plots, and then the statistics window, I open that up, and I want the median, and that's added. As soon as I'm clicking these things, they're added into the table. The mode, if I decide I don't want mode, I unclick it, and it goes away. So it's an interactive philosophy of data analysis. You decide you want something, you see it right away, you can change your mind. It gives you all those things there. Okay. These are some old analyses I ran. That's what this other stuff is there. But you can X these out and get rid of it once you're all done. Let me close all this thing. Let me get rid of that. Okay, so now let's go back to my slides. So I want you trying that out, make sure that you can follow the flow, especially the first few classes we do this. I think it's important that you try to replicate everything that I'm doing for yourselves. Okay, so that's the basic descriptive analyses there. Now, frequency tables. So you saw the class distribution of grades. This is what I use for that. In JASP, under descriptives, there's a checkbox here, and it says frequency tables. And you notice that it says that there's a little note there, in parentheses, nominal and ordinal variables. That means you can only get it for nominal or ordinal variables. If JASP data type for your variable is a scale, you can't get a frequency distribution. And the reason there is, you know, a scale. If it's a scale, it's the idea with JASP is that you're not really interested in the individual categories. It's not going to show you those. We're going to talk about this more next class, where we actually talk about frequencies and frequencies and crosstabs. But this is the one thing that you do have to be very careful about, is that certain type of analyses are only available for certain measurement levels. And it's telling you here, nominal and ordinal, it will give you a frequency for those. So this little icon here, this tells us that these are ordinal. We can get a frequency table. As soon as I click it, it appears on the right-hand side. So I go back into JASP, pull up my JASP again, and there's my descriptives. And watch what happens. I click frequency, and right away I got my frequency tables. So it happens right away. If I decide I don't want them, I can unclick it, and they go away. Okay, so that's where you get the frequency tables. We're going to come back to frequencies next class, but you can run things out now. They're a very handy way of screening a new data set first, just to see how people answered the questions. It gives you a quick overview of, in this case, you can look at the satisfaction distributions. And I mean, if you look at this, you can see it's really skewed. Question 4, 56% are very satisfied, 39.5% are somewhat satisfied, and hardly anyone is anything other than those two categories. And it's pretty much the same for all three of these. So there's a lot of satisfaction. People are going to recommend it, and they definitely would buy it again. Okay, so that's the descriptives. Now, again, I mentioned this earlier, but you can see here, again, if you don't like these question names, Q4, what I did that trick I showed you a few slides back. I went into the spreadsheet. Oh, how do I find my spreadsheet? Let's go back to JASP. So here I am in JASP. Remember, everything is in one window, and you got these little things you can use to control. But if I hit this left arrow here, there's my spreadsheet. I can literally go back and forth between the spreadsheet and the results. And the other thing you can do is slide this over like that too, so you can see part of each. But if I went back into my spreadsheet just to illustrate this, and what I thought was, well, I don't remember what Q4 is. I want to say Q4 satisfied with HP. If you make that change in Excel, save it, it syncs back to JASP, it will then, when you run your analyses, you'll have a nicer variable name, Q4 satisfied with HP. So that's up to you. If you want to change things so it's clear for your purposes, you can do that. Okay. Let's see. All right, so navigating JASP. So I talked about this, but this is just so so you all remember this here. In red, they're hard to see maybe on my slides, but right in the center there, these little triangles, they let you go from window to window. And there's basically three things going on. You have the spreadsheet with the data. You have this panel here that is the, I don't know exactly what JASP calls this, but this is the selection menus to select all the options. And then the third window is the results window. And so what you can do in JASP is you can play with this yourself, and you can go in here, and you might want to take a closer look at the results, and you find that they're all kind of scrunched in this tiny little window. So you can just move this, click that thing there, and so it's all results, because you might have a lot of things and you want to see it. But you'll see there's basically three panes. The first one is the spreadsheet with the data. The second one is the options, selections, and then the third one is the results. And so you can slide this around and navigate from one to the other, but you want to be familiar with how to do that. Because everything's all in one place to kind of keep it tidy so that you can find where things are. Okay, so that's navigating. Be sure you know how to navigate back and forth, make your life easier. And then this is a little bit of information that you can get here. So in JASP, there by each of these things you do in the module. So I clicked descriptives, and that gave us this drop down for all the different questions. Now I scroll down, we see we're at the recoded part of the data set. There's all these things they have now: recoded recommend, recoded choose, recoded Q2_1. And there is, you can scroll up and see the whole thing there. But this blue information icon, this gives you a lot of detail about what you're going to get from this descriptive statistics module. And one of the things they will tell you is what measurement level is required for which analyses. So if you look through some of the stuff here, you'll see, like, for example, plots. And this is very hard to read. It's very small, so I'm squinting here. But it says here, correlation plot. For continuous variables, continuous is going to be the scale type. Displays histograms, density plots, and scatter plots. For box plots, for continuous variables, is this. And so there's things here like central tendency. You only get this for continuous variables. The certain types of statistical results you're only going to get for scale. Other types, like a frequency table, you're only going to get that for nominal and ordinal. But you can always change the measurement level, and you will need to do it for some cases to see certain things. You will actually need to change the measurement level. Like to get a cross tabulation, if a variable has been set up as a scale variable, you can't get a cross tabulation, or you can't get a frequency table. So you'll see this as we work through this over time. That's why it's important, again, going back into JASP, that you know that in that spreadsheet, oops, there I am. In that spreadsheet, this measurement level is completely up to you. So I'm going to scroll here. This is a fairly extensive data set. There's a lot of stuff in here. And when we go all the way towards the end, there's going to be a couple things pop up. Q12 and Q13. What is Q12? What is Q13? What are those two? Just someone take a quick look and tell me what they are. This is kind of purposely half labeled for you to make you have to think about what these things are. So what is Q12? What is Q13? Someone help me out on this and tell me what those are.
Question 12 is what best describes your age?
Okay, 12 is age, and 13 is
It's what best describes your household's total yearly income before taxes.
Okay, so age and income. So let's just say we want to run a frequency on age and income. Okay, so I go into descriptives. I go down here. 12 is age, 13 is income. I pull that over and I say frequency. And I look for my frequencies and I don't see them. Why don't I see them? They're not there. I'll put in Q11 just to make sure JASP isn't broken. I put in Q11, I see a frequency. I'm not seeing a frequency for 12 or 13. I am seeing one for Q11. Why?
Is it because they're scale?
Yeah. So if I want to see a frequency, I can change the measurement type. And if I do that real quickly, because this is one of the things a little tricky about it, but you can easily change 12, let's say it's ordinal. And I'm going to go back to my results. And there they are. They've appeared. The measurement type has been changed. Now I can get a frequency table. There it is for 12. There it is for 13. Now my value labels are 1 through 13. I don't know what those mean without checking my paper code book or my PDF code book, but you can figure that out. Okay, so that's the one thing you want to kind of wrap your head around is the idea of measurement level affects what you can and cannot see as you do different types of analyses. And it just kind of makes you very aware of what your measurement level actually is. The information icon gives you further detail on that. Okay, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but these are other things. This is other things you can play around with. There are box plots you can get that show the distributions. And this is kind of a nice feature here. Right below that window where we drag the variables over, there's something that says split. I'm splitting it by Q14. I looked that up. That turns out to be gender. What this does is it kind of literally does what it says. It gives you statistics for each level of gender for men and women. And so now look at my descriptive statistics. I've split them. I have male, female. I have means for Q12, means for Q13. So they're split by gender. And my plots are now split by male and female for age and for income that I put red to make clear what that is. So you can play around with splitting. That gives you statistics split by something, by levels of a segmentation variable, which can often be very useful. And JASP has some basic plotting. You see these box plots here. We'll talk more about box plots next class. How many of you, just a wave of hand, have seen that from an intro stats class, the box plots? Okay, great. So that's kind of a standard thing we see. Then you also do these things, the violin plots. See that? It's a box plot, but then it puts the distribution over it on both sides to give you a sense of kind of the shape of the distribution. So you get those things out of JASP too. Okay, a couple quick things there. As you do analyses, and the best way to see this is actually for you to do it, each time you can click descriptives multiple times, and you can, each time you do it, it'll open up on the left-hand side a section. And then you can use the black pen icon. What I did is I went back and I renamed this so you can change these things. So I said here, I did some descriptive analyses on questions 4, 5, 6. And then I did some descriptive analyses on questions 12, 13, 14. Then I put everything in, I ran frequencies and everything. So I'm going to do descriptive analysis and everything. So you can rename them. You can drag these things and reorder them. And as you reorder those analyses on the left, it reorders the output on the right. Then you can, if you wanted to like duplicate an analysis, just say you've set up you have a fairly complicated analysis you set up on 3 different variables. And you want to repeat that same complicated analysis on 3 other variables. You can duplicate it and just name the variables in a list and everything will be redone for you. So you can do that thing. We talked about the blue information that tells you about, if you're doing descriptives, what are all the different details you can get. If you're doing t-tests, it'll tell you all about t-tests. And then the red X icon, if you click that, that deletes an analysis. So JASP gives you this kind of handy way of organizing all the analyses and results. You want to save stuff, right? So like I used this to get the grade distribution and I saved it. So there's a few different ways to save things. The best way to try this is your cells, to just play around with it and see what happens, but it's pretty nice. You can use the hamburger menu to save things. That's one way. In the results window, there's a little caret triangle drop down where you can export results. And so you can export results and try things that way. But then each individual thing that you do has a little caret by it. So the box plots, like those little violin plots, there's a drop down there. You can save image as, and so you can save those as like a JPEG or PNG. I'm not sure exactly what it does there. You can save it as an image file. Or under the box plot section, there's a drop down there. So there's these little things that are all throughout there. You click on them and you can copy or save. There's a lot of ways of saving things. The manual talks about some of those, but you should try those things out there. Of course, what I did for my slides is I just did screenshots. So you always got that option too. But it gives you a bunch of ways of saving things that you've done. Okay, so I'm going to start you up in the exercise in just a second. But first, I want to point out that you got a lot of ways you have of learning this. If this is new to you, which I think it is there anyone here who's used JASP before? So I think JASP is new, but you've used other software, right? So what is some other software you've used to analyze data in other courses or on jobs? Can you repeat that, please?
Like RStudio.
Okay, so RStudio, great. JASP is actually using R. It may not look like it, but everything is JASP, and JASP is based on R. These are R applications that JASP is using. So you use RStudio. Anything else?
SAS.
SAS. Okay, cool. Anyone ever used SPSS? Yeah, you probably used Excel. So there's a lot of things you can use. Now we're on the same page here. JASP is open source. That means there's a lot of support materials. So here's some bullets here that are some things. You have this official manual, but there's another JASP book. There's a lot of tutorials and YouTube videos. There's a forum. JASP has a good Twitter. There's other students in the class, and then you got me. So you got a bunch of resources here for learning how to use it. Okay, exercise 6. I'm going to see if this is available, and if not, I'm going to make it available to you right now to get you all started. So in exercise 6, okay, here we go. All right, so in today's class, let me see, I don't know if I made this available yet. No, I did not. I'm struggling to find the make available little checkbox here. There we go. Okay, you should see this now. Okay, so download exercise 6, and this is something I want you to work on individually. We got about 5 minutes left, so download it now and take a look at it, and you'll see it is pretty brief there. I think I've got a slide here. Let me see if I have a slide that walks us through this. Okay. Okay, so pull it down. Are you able to pull it down? Just a quick wave. You have it. Great. You got that there. So in this data, as I mentioned, those recoded variables. And so there's one called recoded SAT. It's a recoding of question 4. Now, this is something that happens very often in actual marketing research analysis. As you're working on a project, there's a lot of people working on the project, right? Your colleagues have recoded some variables, but they've forgotten what they've done. Or you've recoded a variable and you've forgotten what you've done. You just know that it's recoded. An easy way to figure it out is just to do a crosstab. You cross-tabulate the original variable by the recoded one, and you can figure out how the recoding works. We're going to talk about a lot more with crosstabs on Wednesday, but what I want you to do now is get that JASP data set, get it into JASP, And then I got the bullets here that tell you do the frequencies module, classical contingency tables. And then you're just doing a crosstab. They'll build a table that shows all the combinations of the values of Q4 with the recoded stat. You've got a nice little rectangular table there. And that will help you understand how Q4 is recoded stat, how Q9 underscore 5 per. You're going to find that on the code book. What is that thing? That was recoded underscore Q9 underscore 5. How the heck did that happen? How is Q1 recoded to recoded age, right? So how did these four things happen? The only way that anyone can figure it out at this point without being told is to do a crosstab, and then you should be able to see. That's the exercise. That's all it is. So it gets you to run 4 crosstabs in JASP. These instructions that I have on the screen that are also in the exercise tell you how to do it. Look at that. We'll talk about crosstabs next class, and we'll look at how this is done and briefly discuss it. But by then, you should all have done this analysis so that you have this in hand and you have thought about it. Okay? So 4 minutes. Get started, and get started for the purpose of seeing if you have any questions. So what I suggest is you start this, and if any questions come up in the next 4 minutes, then we'll see.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is the data? It's the data from the beginning of the class, right? It's not anything different.
Yeah, the data set is, let's make sure we're all looking at the right one here. It is under the HP case 1.1. So if I go into Chrome here, the one there that says HPK survey codebook and JASP data set. So the data set for today, we're going to use it next class, we're going to use it next week for the lectures, is the HP survey. So case 1.1 HP data recoded Blackboard. The very first data set, the young people survey, that's down the road, that's for your project. But the immediate data set is this one. It's in week 7. And there it is right there. Okay. So you should download that. Anyone able to get that into JASP yet? Yeah, cool. Great. People. Anyone run a crosstab yet? Quick wave of hands if any of you are looking at a crosstab right now. Right. Okay, so you get crosstabs. And then you just figure, and you should, by looking at the crosstab, it should be pretty clear how it's recoded. That's all we're doing right now. Okay? So I'm going to wait just another, we've got a couple more minutes. If anyone has a stumbling block, you download the data, you want to open it in JASP, and then you're going to go to that frequencies module, put in row, column variables, get crosstabs, and that's what you're looking at for next class.
I have a question. So once you download the data, is it supposed to automatically like go to JASP, like you download it into JASP?
It will not. So you're going to download it somewhere in your computer. So keep a folder where you have all the data sets for this class, for example. And that's what I was saying. If you double click on it, JASP may not open. That's why I have a slide that tells you how to like associate file types with JASP. Don't worry about that for now. Just open JASP up separately, and then you can use JASP to open the file. Right, there's a hamburger menu open, and there's a slide I showed how to do that. The manual also talks about how to do that. So you could do one of those two ways.
Okay, let me try again.
The foolproof way this should work, if you at least as long as you know where your data is that if you're in JASP, the blue hamburger, click that, open, computer, browse, and then you'll find out where it is in your computer. Okay, 11 o'clock. So let's call it a wrap for today. please definitely go through, try the stuff I've done, explore with JASP, read ahead for next class. For next class, and one little suggestion I have, I think that would be a good idea for this, is for the readings for next class, start with the JASP manual. Do that first. It's shorter, it's clearer, it's to the point. There's 6 pages. Then read Malhotra, because he goes into a lot more detail. It's hard to see the forest for the trees if you start with Malhotra. Start with the JASP manual, read those 6 pages, then read Malhotra. And I would probably suggest that for everything we do, read the JASP manual first, then read Malhotra afterwards. Okay? Okay, great. All right, so that's it. I look forward to seeing you all on Wednesday, and take care. See you then.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Professor?
Professor,
Oh, hey.
quick question.
Okay.
So I downloaded JASP, but I think my computer might be too old for the newest version. So when I tried to download the data, it told me I couldn't open it.
Are you on a Mac?
Yeah, I have
That's the
an
same
old
thing
one.
that happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, JASP
Sorry.
has old versions. I think there is on JASP. If you go to the site, you can find a version for your operating system. I think it's okay to use older versions of it. They should be able to do everything we're doing.
I did download an older version for my operating system, but I think the data, I don't know why, but when I tried to open up the data in my JASP, it told me that it was too new.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's an issue, huh? Yeah. So that one, I can give you an Excel a CSV file version, but that won't have things nicely labeled.
Okay.
But let me do that as an interim. And so, Daniel, you're having the same problem?
No, I was going to talk to you about something else.
Okay, was that Ethan that had the same problem?
It was me, but I'm not sure if it's the same problem. I'm pretty sure I downloaded the right version. It's just when I open the data in Blackboard, it says there's no application set to run the document like case 1.1 HP data recoded.
Right.
So it's just not letting me save the data so I can open it in JASP. So I don't know how to go about that.
So that one, you want to go back, I think, to, let's see my slides here. Let me go back to the, hold on a second here. That's, I think, that sounds like the file association issue. Let's see. Okay, so on the slide I'm on here right now, is this what's happening? That when you click it, do you get a number? It's under number 2 here. So if you're on a Mac or Windows, it may not necessarily know when you double click the JASP extension that it should open JASP. You have to associate it. That's what I'm saying. If you try to go through this first thing, it should work. But I don't know if that's the problem you're saying you're having.
Yeah, because there's like an option to choose application to run it on, and then JASP is like it's not letting me click it. Like I can see it there, but it's not clickable. Same with Excel.
I ran into this problem too before it told me it was too new. What I tried to do was I went into JASP and then I clicked the open and browse. And if you go through your downloads, the file should be in your downloads and then you can open it there.
That always does work. But if you want, Ethan, to like make it work for the clicking thing, if you're on a Mac, just follow these instructions. There's the way to make it ungrayed out. You can see all the applications, not just the recommended applications. So there is a way to fix that.
Okay, I'll try that, and I'll send you an email if it doesn't work.
Yeah, but as the other thing is, though, is this Julia's suggesting you can always just go through the menus for now. You can at least get it working there. But the other thing from this, Julia, so you're saying, though, you open it and it doesn't like the...
Yeah, it just tells me that the data is too new, and like the version is too new, and I can't run it on the old version.
Okay, can you do me a favor and send me the email, the error you're getting, and also the version of your operating system?
Yeah.
and I can figure out what the best options for that is. And you can't really upgrade yours, you're saying, right? Your
Yeah,
computer.
my computer's really old, so I kind of maxed it out at this point.
Yeah. Okay. So let's figure out what we can do. I mean, the brute force way of doing it is going to get you a CSV file. You can just read it in yourself and save your own JASP file. But then you're going to have to do some of the you won't have the labeling, but I think you'll be able to still work with it.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, cool. But send me an email. Great.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you.
So Daniel.
So
And hold on.
I
Let me
just
just
wanted
stop
to
the
talk to you
recording for a
because I
second
just-
here.
Oh yeah.
Just wait 1 second. There he goes.